Have you ever looked at the person you promised to spend your life with and realized they value a piece of shiny metal more than your family's survival? That's the exact moment my marriage died, even if it took my husband 6 months to notice the body was cold. We like to think we know the people we sleep next to every night. We tell ourselves, if things get really bad, they'll have my back. But sometimes, it takes a crisis, a real, life or death emergency to strip away the mask and show you who they really are. My emergency arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. It started with a phone call from my sister. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. My mother had collapsed. She needed urgent cardiac surgery. Because of a loophole in her basic insurance policy, we needed $5,000 up front, just to get her admitted to the private wing where the specialist could operate. $5,000. To some people that's pocket change. To us at the time, it felt like a mountain. But I wasn't panicked. Not yet, because I knew my husband Mark had a savings account. We had talked about our rainy day fund for years. I went home that evening completely confident that we could handle this together. I was wrong. Let me tell you how a simple request for help turned into a lesson about cold-blooded selfishness, and how just 6 months later, the universe decided to write its own ending to our story. I still remember the smell of the dinner I made that night. It was garlic pasta, Mark's favorite. I wanted him to be relaxed when we talked. When he walked through the door, I didn't waste any time. I told him everything. My mother's heart, the doctor's warning, the $5,000 we needed by the end of the week. I looked at him, waiting for him to hold my hand and tell me we'd figure it out. Instead, he took a slow sip of his water, leaned back in his chair, and frowned. He looked at me and said, "We can't touch that money." His voice was incredibly flat, almost bored. "That savings account is for our future, Sarah. If we start dipping into it for every family emergency, we'll never buy a house. Your sister should pay for it, or your mom should ask the hospital for a payment plan." I stared at him. A payment plan? For emergency heart surgery? "Mark," I whispered, the air completely leaving my lungs. "She could die. It's $5,000. We have $8,000 in that account right now. We can rebuild it. I'll work extra shifts. I'll do whatever it takes. Please." He just shook his head, muttered something about financial discipline, and walked into the living room to watch TV. I sat at that kitchen table for 2 hours, completely numb. I realized then that my husband didn't see my family as his family. He saw my mother's life as an inconvenient expense. But the real slap in the face came 3 days later. I had spent those 3 days begging friends, selling my old college laptop, and taking out a high-interest personal loan just to scrape the money together. I was exhausted, bruised, and emotionally broken, but I got the money. My mother was scheduled for surgery. When Mark came home that Friday, he looked happier than he had in months. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He pulled a heavy green leather box from his bag and set it on the table. "Look what I got," he said, opening the box. Inside was a brand new, luxury Swiss watch. The gold hands caught the light of our cheap living room lamp. He strapped it onto his wrist and boasted, "It's an investment piece. My colleague at the firm got me a deal. Only $4,800. These things hold their value better than stocks, Sarah. We're going to make so much money off this in a few years." $4,800. Almost the exact amount I needed to keep my mother's heart beating. He didn't look at me. He was too busy admiring his own wrist. He didn't see the tears freezing on my cheeks. In that moment, the man I loved died in my eyes. He was replaced by a stranger wearing a luxury watch. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a plate. I've learned that when you're truly done with someone, you don't waste your energy on anger. You save it for your exit plan. My mother's surgery was a success. The recovery was long, but she survived. Every day I spent sitting by her hospital bed, I worked. I had my laptop open on my knees. I'm a graphic designer by trade, but I had always been too afraid to go freelance full-time. I liked the safety of my low-paying, predictable job. But safety was a luxury I could no longer afford. I needed to pay off that high-interest loan, and more importantly, I needed to build my own financial independence. I started taking on freelance clients at night. I slept 4 hours a night. I designed branding for local businesses, took on messy website redesigns, and said yes to every single gig that came my way. Meanwhile, Mark was living his best life. He wore that watch to every dinner, every office party, every weekend barbecue. He loved the attention it gave him. He loved pretending he was a man of high status. Whenever people complimented him on it, he'd smirk and say, "You've got to invest in quality." He didn't notice that I had stopped asking him for help with the groceries. He didn't notice that we no longer shared a bed. I told him my late-night work was keeping him awake, so I slept on the sofa. He didn't care. As long as his life was comfortable, he didn't care about mine. But here's the thing about people who buy luxury items they can't actually afford. They usually have terrible financial habits across the board. Mark's investment mindset didn't stop with the watch. He started buying custom suits on credit. He leased a luxury car he couldn't afford because he wanted to look the part for a promotion he was convinced he was getting. He lived in a house of cards, built entirely on pride and debt. And then, the wind started to blow. 6 months after my mother's surgery, the market took a massive downturn. Mark's firm, which specialized in high-risk financial consulting, started bleeding clients. One Friday afternoon, Mark walked into our apartment. He didn't have his leather bag. He didn't have his smug smile. His face was gray, his shoulders slumped. He had been laid off. Not only was he laid off, but because of a non-compete clause he had carelessly signed, he couldn't work for a competitor in our city for at least a year. At first, he tried to play it cool. He muttered that he'd find something else, and that he had savings. Except, he didn't. Remember that $8,000 we had in our joint savings? Mark had quietly cleared it out months ago to cover the down payment on his leased luxury car and the interest on his mounting credit cards. He had assumed his big bonus at the end of the year would cover it. Now, there was no bonus. There was no job. And the bills didn't care about his feelings. Within 2 months, the car was repossessed. The credit card companies were calling our home phone every hour. Mark was a shell of a man, pacing the living room, terrified of every knock on the door. One evening, he sat down next to me on the sofa. It was the first time in months he had actually looked me in the eyes. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. I need your help. We're going to lose the apartment. I have a court date next week for the credit card debt. They're threatening to garnish my future wages and freeze my personal accounts. I need $5,000 to settle with them and keep them from taking everything. $5,000. The exact amount I had begged him for 6 months ago. The exact amount he had refused to give me to save my mother's life. I looked down at his wrist. He was still wearing the luxury watch. Even in his ruin, he couldn't bear to part with the symbol of his fake status. I asked him, "What about your investment?" "The watch, Mark. You said it holds its value better than stocks. Sell it." He looked down at his wrist, then back at me, panic in his eyes. "I tried," he whispered. "I went to 3 different dealers yesterday. Because of the market crash, nobody is buying luxury watches for what they're worth. The best offer I got was $1,500. Sarah, I bought it for $4,800. I can't sell it for that little. It's a loss." I looked at him and said, "Then I guess you're taking a loss." He panicked. "Sarah, please. I know you have the money. I've seen your bank statements from your freelance business. You have over $10,000 in your business account. Just loan it to me. I'm your husband." I looked at him, and for the first time in 6 months I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, just a profound sense of clarity. "You're right," I said. "I do have the money, but that money is for my future. If I start dipping into it for every family emergency, we'll never get ahead. Isn't that what you told me?" The color completely drained from his face as his own words from 6 months ago echoed back to him. "You can't do this to me," he whispered. "We're married." "We were married," I corrected him. "We stopped being married the day you decided a watch was worth more than my mother's life." I walked over to the desk, pulled out a thick envelope, and dropped it onto his lap. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out and signed by me. "I'm leaving tonight," I told him. "I've rented a small apartment closer to my mother. You can keep the watch, Mark. I hope it keeps you warm at night. I hope it tells you exactly how much time you have left before the debt collectors show up." He sat there, holding the papers, staring at his expensive Swiss watch as I walked out of that apartment. A weight I didn't even realize I was carrying lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have a luxury watch on my wrist. I didn't have a fancy leased car. But I had my self-respect. I had my financial independence. And most importantly, I had my mother, healthy and smiling, waiting for me at my new home. Sometimes, the best investment you can make isn't in gold or stocks, or luxury brands, it's in yourself. Because when the tables turn and they always do, the only person you can truly count on to save you is you. If this story reminded you of your own worth, or if you've ever had to learn a hard lesson about who has your back, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about life, survival, and the moments that change us forever. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves.